You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for the show. After a little bit of a rough start, I hit the wrong button. I hate when I do that. I was kind of scrambling today, though. Kind of running a little bit late, and so I barely got all this stuff up in time. But hey, we're here, and of course, we're going to discuss the incredibly explosive episode of the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 6, which we actually started the discussion on Friday's show. Because it was really hard for us to talk about what we were talking about without referencing episode 6 in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes a more difficult thing because, as we come to the show's climax, it's heating up, and, of course, we've been dying to talk about this episode. I mean, there's so many nuggets and so many things in here. Jeez. It's almost like you don't even know where to start
Yeah, I know. Well,
but
you know what? Fortunately, Ronaldo does. He kicks off the discussion. He says, "What's up, guys? The Boba Fett cameo was really cool." And I think I even referenced that on Friday's show.
Well, yeah, I mean, Eric, you actually saw a really cool meme about the cameo of Boba Fett. Like, yeah, it's cool to see Boba Fett make a cameo on Boba Fett, on the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because the last two episodes really have been really focused around, Din Djarin, the Mandalorian. So it's been crazy because we haven't seen much of Boba Fett, but that doesn't mean the episodes weren't good, because they have been phenomenal.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is the thing that everybody has been talking about, is the fact that many people have said, somewhat rightfully so, that the episodes that don't feature Boba Fett are some of the best ones. But I think that one of the things I understand why people are criticizing it in a way, but I don't think it's warranted. And that's because you have to understand that this isn't just called Boba Fett. It's called the Book of Boba Fett. It's basically like his chronicles, his adventures. And what they're doing is they're very much, I think, setting up this criminal underworld in which he's operating in. And I think that it's necessary to dedicate some of the time, right? Because on one hand, you had to go back and tell everybody, hey, how did you get out of the Sarlacc pit? And we saw you in essentially Tusken clothing, and you have a gaffy stick and all this, and the Mandalorian. Well, how'd you get that? And so they're also trying to show Boba Fett's mindset in this universe. Not necessarily just expand upon what we already learned about him, but really get into his character a little bit more. And then I think that you can't just have Mando, show up out of nowhere. Oh yeah, okay, I'll help. You can't just have Grogu show up out of nowhere, because, and we'll talk about it as we progress, because again, we're not going to necessarily give like a play-by-play of the episode. I mean, you guys can, number one, there's a lot of shows that do this. This is like a discussion show, so we're probably going to be a little bit all over the place on this, but essentially, I think that what this comes down to, by showing Luke, by showing Ahsoka and Grogu and where they're at and what they're doing, it honestly makes a little bit more sense to do that now than it would be in season 3 of The Mandalorian, because ultimately I think everybody's going to come and help Boba. But you have to explain where they are, how they came to, to the choices they have, and whatever. So I think that that's a big part of why they're spending so much time on this, because you almost have to, it's like you spent so much time in the first 4 episodes really fleshing out Boba Fett's story, where he's been, his motivations, all that other stuff, that now you got to turn your attention to world building.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is kind of one of those things where I think as a Star Wars fan, you really kind of start to really appreciate, the depths of some of this stuff. You
Hmm.
know, we've always wanted to see, whatever happened to Boba Fett. And we kind of see, okay, yeah, he got out of the Sarlacc pit and everything. He's alive and well. And so now I think this is kind of taking a nice turn. Um, I think when I say this, I think he's getting some help, both from Mando within the universe and outside of it. He's benefiting from the Mandalorian, the actual TV show. And I think because of that, it's kind of once again realigning fans back into it, because you have some people who weren't too keen on Boba Fett because it's like, oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. But then now I like the Mandalorian, but now I don't. I don't like Boba Fett. Well, now you kind of have both, so now it's kind of once again sucking those people back in. And I think it's a brilliant move, by them. But I don't think it was done. Maybe even it may not even been done for that reason, but it might be just be the happy accident. It could have been in the story group all the time, and it probably was. But I think that's just the caveat. Just is like, okay, well, in case something happens, we got Mando here that's going to kind of um, round things out. But
Well, and
man,
it's a good
this,
observation though, because I think that what you're talking about, it's almost like a reverse of what we saw in season 2 of The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian, Boba Fett comes in and essentially steals the show. I mean, if you really think
hmm
back about the episodes
yeah,
that Boba Fett was in, it's like, oh, this basically took everything up a notch. And then you started thinking, man, I kind of wish Boba Fett would be in this episode, you know? And now it's almost the other way around. It's like you have this whole thing about fleshing out Fett's story and all that stuff, and all of a sudden, Din shows up and it just takes the show up 10 notches. So
hmm
it's interesting how each of the characters elevate each other's shows.
yeah. I mean, and it's the right peppering, or if I could use that terminology, or spicing up certain, a dish, right? You have to have the right amount of something. You don't want to have too much of it because then it becomes overbearing, and it's like, okay, like, dude, this might as well just be Mandalorian season 3 at this point.
Well, and that
So
was
you
a
wait to
big
bring them
that
in.
yeah, that's a big
Yeah,
criticism though.
yeah, it is, and I think it's kind of like, all right, but you're seeing how he came to become a part of Boba Fett's regime, and so
Exactly.
I think that it's poignant that was done, but I think it was done at the right time, and that's what's the timing is everything. Because if you'd have done this, earlier, it would have been like, okay, why are we bringing the Mandalorian in at this point? Like,
Well,
it
but
would have been off-putting.
here's my thoughts on that though, and that's a good point because and this is where I'm a little bit torn because in essence the way the show has been laid out, I agree with you. However,
Right.
I did say this on Friday's show. Of course, if you guys haven't checked out Friday's show, check out Friday's show. Um, what was Friday's
Right.
show? What I mean, I know it's a terrible. It's like it's a disease, but I actually forgot what we talked
Yeah,
about.
it's called Alzheimer's.
We're senioritis, man. I'm starting to get over 50, dude.
Yeah,
It
man.
it happens. Just everybody wait. If you're not there, you're
No,
gonna get there.
you still got that COVID fog. I think that's what that
Yeah,
is.
maybe that's it. That could be it. Yeah, things have been kind of stressful lately. Maybe it's an anxiety thing. I don't know. But I remember whatever it was this is so embarrassing. Whatever it was we talked about, I remember we had to reveal, oh, it was a Sabine Wren thing. It was why
Yeah,
Sabine must be in The Mandalorian.
yeah.
Okay, well, when we were talking about that, I brought
I
up
was
the
gonna tell you, but
fact.
I was too busy making jokes.
Yep. I understand. I would have done the same thing, I'll be honest. But I was basically saying that yes, while it does seem like this is almost a soft premiere of The Mandalorian season 3, there's a lot of elements in this that really make sense to explore in this show and in this storyline. And one of the main things that I said, and this is where I might seem like I'm flip-flopping a little bit here, because on one hand, I agree with your point. On the other hand, I almost think that this should have been maybe the second or third episode of the season. Because now, and the one scene in particular that I'm pointing to, where the Book of Boba Fett is starting to really live up to its reputation and what we were sold in the trailers is
Mhm.
the bomb in that cantina
Mhm.
run by Jennifer Beals, little Flashdance girl. Which I can never remember. No, that was the other one. I don't remember her character's name. See, it's terrible. Terrible. I'm getting older and it sucks. I used to have this encyclopedic knowledge of like every character, but then again, in my defense, the franchise was a lot smaller at that point. But
Mhm.
now I'm starting to sound like, remember when your
The guy
parents
ring
would be
old
like,
man.
I just can't keep track of all these characters. And you're like, with grandma, it's like there's 10 of them. But I mean, that's what I'm thinking, that now you're starting to get more of that gangster feel, that criminal underworld vibe, that sense of danger and really almost that 1313 series that they were going to put out.
Yeah. I mean, but I think, I think they're doing it right in the sense of like we kind of need to figure out like Boba Fett's space, where he is. And, because unlike Den, like Den was a brand new character. So it's like, okay, he had
Right.
a clean slate. We had nothing to judge him on, but this guy's been around, and they even keep saying in Boba Fett, he's been around since the Empire days. Like he's like this legendary guy. So it's kind of like, yeah, you can't overlook some things. There's some things you have to address and kind of want to try to figure out. And especially, he's a character we pretty much know the least about. You always mention he's only been in 7 minutes of the whole trilogy
Yeah,
collectively,
that's
but yet,
true.
everybody knows who he is. He's been on posters and farmed out and cartoons and all types of stuff, but we really don't know Boba Fett. And so now we're actually getting a chance to know him, the man, but also like, okay, the things that he's gone through recently.
Hmm.
And so the thing is with um the Mandalorian, which I think is kind of cool in a way, is I like kind of the fact that they brought him in to, and you're kind of getting some closure. Because before I kind of really move on, do you feel like we got complete closure at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian?
I mean,
It's kind of iffy. Do you kind of feel
I,
that
I
way?
guess. I mean, I guess it depends on, because here's the problem. Here's the problem that I have with any kind of thing like that. I mean, these shows are designed to leave you on cliffhangers. You're
Hmm.
not really supposed to get closure, but I know what you mean in a way, because the cliffhanger of season 1, of course, was Gideon having the dark saber.
Right.
Okay. But there was relative closure for the plot line or story arc of that season. It was just, he pulled a haha, I'm still alive, and look, I got this dark saber, and now your mind's blown, and you're like, oh man, I can't wait till season 2 because I want to see where this is going to go. But
Hmm.
with The Mandalorian season 2, though, I know what you mean in the sense of it almost had like a pseudo closure. They're on the ship, and okay, little Grogu's going off with Luke and everything else, but with everything that they set up, you kind of wish there had been another episode or something, which I think is
Hmm.
what you're getting to, which is what this episode, if this episode had been the last episode of The Mandalorian, that would have given you some of the closure.
Yeah. Or I like and this is what I like about it, is like they're kind of, in a way, it's kind of a nifty way of adding more episodes, because Mandalorian season 3 is probably going to be like 10 episodes
Hmm.
or whatnot. But see, now with these last two, you've been able to kind of squeak in really 12,
Yeah, well, that's what
and
I
you
was
kind
going
of
to
get
say
you're
too,
giving us
right?
that closure. So that now when we go to when Mandalorian season 3 opens up, we can focus on him dealing with Mandalore and all that stuff, because
Right.
now we kind of know we have closure with this whole Luke situation, because we're like, okay, well, of course, all of us, well, what's going on with Grogu? What's going on, with Luke? And, how's but now it's like, all right, he went to him. He's like, okay, I can't see him because he's having a hard time letting go anyway. And it's only going to pull him back even further if he sees me. So I'm just dropping this gift off and I just have to go. I want to see him, but I have to go. And, they both kind of, of course, Grogu kind of feels him in the force and like, okay, he was here. I know it. And that was him. I see him flying away, but all right, I guess I know he was around. And there was some sense of closure there. So I think that was cool about this episode as well.
Well, I think in a sense, though, you could almost, I mean, this is probably getting a little nitpicky, but you can actually almost refer to it as just tying up loose ends more so than even closure.
Right.
Because I agree that I'm really happy they dealt with this here, because now you can start Mandalorian Season 3 with almost a
Fresh.
clean slate again. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Let's get to
Yep.
some of... Ronaldo's been chatting up a storm, as you can imagine. And then, of course, we'll start to really get into what we like and didn't like about the episode. So Ronaldo says, to be fair, it wasn't because Boba wasn't in the episode. It was because the writing was good. And he's, of course, talking about why this episode was incredible. And yeah, I think that it's just more or less the joke that everybody's making, that it's just a kind of a weird thing that Boba Fett's not in these 2 episodes, and they happen to be incredible episodes. But, I digress. And then, of course, and this will probably, I'm sure, be a big topic of discussion for us tonight, too. He says, Luke's CGI face was really good. Not perfect, but a big improvement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, now that's something, me and some of my production friends were talking about this, too, because they really upped their game on this whole thing. They hired that guy that did the deep fake on YouTube, and obviously that was a smart hiring decision. The other interesting thing in reading the article was it was not Mark Hamill that did the voice. What they did was very similar to what they did with Val Kilmer, which makes me wonder if part of the reason why they delayed the Top Gun movie was to take advantage of this new thing. Now, I don't know if it's the same company, but there was a company that really felt bad for Val Kilmer and the fact that he can squeak out sounds, but that's about it. And they wanted to be able to give him the opportunity to be able to speak in his original kind of younger voice. So what they did, they have this software, this AI thing, and you feed it, the minimum I think is like 3 hours. But obviously the more, the target is like 24, 30 hours or something. And you just feed it as many clean recordings as you can of the person's voice. And then what this does is it allows the person to actually talk in their old voice. And so it would be kind of cool because they gave this to Val Kilmer. I mean, it was just like kind of an experimental thing. They perfected it, and they're just like, here, you can have this. And of course, that was good advertising for them. Well, they did something similar with Mark Hamill. They went in, he had done some audiobooks around that time. Of course, they fed in all the ADR dialogue from the movies. There was various interviews and stuff that he'd done. They fed all this stuff in, and they generated the lines off of this. So obviously they had this younger actor, and then they CGI'd the face. But what was weird was, I thought it was Mark Hamill, because I remember that Hamill had said that, because somebody said, well, how are you going to sound like your younger self? And he was like, well, I'm a voice actor. He was like, so I can actually imitate my younger self if I have to.
That's kind of cool.
It is.
I mean, that's kind of, when you think about it.
Yeah, but
kind of tricky.
Well, and that's the thing is like, because, we were just sort of sitting at work going, well, if you could do that, wouldn't you just want to do that all the time? But, yeah, it would probably take a little bit of effort and, but I mean, that part is really kind of sweet, though. And so that's why I thought that it was just Mark Hamill actually doing the voice, but it wasn't. It was this really scary AI. And, part of the discussion we can get into is this really opens kind of a freaky door. Because, you can make new John Wayne movies now if you want. I mean, you can take all these dead actors or maybe people that are retired or, and then...
Well, it answers our one thing that we always were concerned about, because we always said, let's keep James Earl Jones in prayer and lift it up in good health, because if you want anything done with Vader, you better do it now, because he's like 90, but now with this whole thing, I mean, you can do a Darth Vader movie now if you want to, especially if he's in a suit. There you go.
Yeah, because James Earl Jones is just a voice, right? So you always had another actor playing him. So yeah, exactly. So that's a good point. What else does Ronaldo say? He says, That's my only problem with this episode. The ending of this episode is great, but it has nothing to do with Boba Fett. I don't necessarily think that's true. It can seem that way, but you have to understand it's a world building thing. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the underworld that Boba Fett actually has to deal with. And they're setting that up. Because if you even look at, well, if you're talking about the very, very, very end with Grogu having to make his choice, that has everything to do with Boba Fett. Everything. Because the two theories are that Grogu is... He's probably going to choose the lightsaber, but he's probably going to want to go back and help Din. And that means helping Boba. So it would not surprise me if that were the case. That whole choice that he is making is huge.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's... And, it's like, okay, do you become a part of the whole Mandalorian thing? Because then that changes the landscape of things.
Well, that's why I don't think he's going to... It's really brilliant how they're doing this, because you really don't know. You really don't know.
You really put him in a situation where it's like you or even I would say us as fans, like, what would we want him to do? Of course, most of us would probably want him to be, go to the light side, become a Jedi and stuff like that. But then, of course, then you have to ask the question, okay, well, where was he doing the sequel trilogy? What happened? But then, as a Mandalorian, it's kind of cool because it's almost you got another Tar Vizsla situation. Because, and I like the whole conversation that Din had with Ahsoka. He's like, well, he's a foundling. This is his right. She's like, but what if he's a Padawan now, though? You know what I mean? And so it's just kind of like, and Luke is already sensing the conflict, because on one hand, Grogu's had a trouble past around the Jedi. He watched them all get slaughtered and destroyed. And
yeah, that was cool. That flashback that they had.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that, I'm glad you brought that up, because it actually triggered the memory, right? Because, it's been since Wednesday since I've seen this thing. I really love the fact... too. I really love the fact that they actually flashed back and showed you, in a very vague, ethereal sense, where Grogu was, what he saw, a little bit of his background there.
Yeah, and, he's been hunted basically by Gideon. So it's kind of like all because he's a Force user. And it's like, okay, well, he had no help, but it's like, okay, the whole time he's been with Din, Din has always looked out for him, and he's had somebody to watch over him. Now there's speculation, and we have to see where this goes, that Obi-Wan was the one who actually rescued him from the temple. And that might pop up in the Obi-Wan series. So
it would either have to be Obi-Wan or Ahsoka.
Yeah.
That'd be great if he was one of the younglings that Anakin was,
hacking
That's
away
the Skywalker. Yeah, exactly. Grogu's like, yeah, this looks a little sketchy. I'm gonna just sort of back off into this corner. Maybe he's not gonna see me.
He's in that pod. He hits that button, and a little hood comes over.
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna get to this next chat, but what do you want to say?
Yes, and that was cool too. Like, I love the playfulness they kind of had with each other. Like, where Luke is trying to teach Grogu, of course, while they're meditating, and he's once again focused on everything else because he's hungry. He senses his frog and he wants to eat it, and he's just like, Grogu, and he's just like, oh yeah, sorry. So it was a typical kid type situation. I love that, and then I loved how Luke always was trying to reinforce things. Like, okay, so this is what has your attention. Okay, fine, let's use this. So he uses the Force and lifts all these frogs out of the pond. And Grogu's like amazed, and he starts looking at his hand like, hey man, like, you can do this. I have this
Yeah, like,
unlimited
right?
supply
Like,
of like
"Oh,
food. You
is
know,
this a thing?"
sweet. Yeah, right. So, I listen, and then Luke, of course, just drops it like, all right, now let's get back to this. So once again, he's trying to encourage Grogu in his own little way, just, to stick with the Jedi path. And, I loved how watching him trying to teach Grogu, with the whole standing on the log and, his little foot is trying to balance himself. And,
Mhm.
it's hilarious and kind of cute to me. But then when the trainer remote comes out, and that was the cutest thing in the world to me. It's like, all right, when he sits
Oh, yeah.
at his feet, and then he just pushes it like a ball. It's like, no, 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 that's not how it works. And then he shoots the thing at him, and Grogu's like, hey, man, what are you doing?
Oh, that was
You
to
know,
me, that was
that was
one of the funniest
priceless.
things, because the whole time I'm thinking about it, and the thing starts to, fly, and I'm thinking to myself, that poor little guy has no idea what this thing is about to do. We as an audience
Just
do,
like,
though. And
because we
there
saw it
was,
happen to Luke.
and to his credit, because I always was wondering, I was waiting for Grogu to kind of just be like, this sucks. I don't really want to be here. I mean, I was cool with
Right.
this. You're having me do this stuff. This hurts. I mean,
Yep.
but they didn't go in that direction. He was receptive. And I think that was because, and you alluded to this, he's seeing people that have powers like him that he doesn't understand. And
hmm
he's learning about himself along with learning about the Force. And so I
Yeah,
think that
definitely.
maybe overrides, any negative elements to the training. But another thing that I want to ride off on that you were talking about is that we actually get to see Luke training when he's not grumpy and hates the Force. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is really cool about this whole scene is the fact that we get to see Luke and his style more when it's fresh and he's really wanting to do something, and a little less when he's just like, get off my lawn.
Right.
And so I
Yeah,
think
I
that
mean,
that
you could.
part's cool.
Yeah, you see the compassion that he has.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, you remind me of someone. He was my teacher. He was, his name was Yoda. He often, he once told me, size matters not, and that's how he talks in riddles. And, so I thought that was kind of hilarious. And,
Yeah, that whole
you
thing was
know,
great, man, when he was talking about Yoda and stuff. Because for Luke, if you think about it, it's got to be a really strange experience for him.
hmm oh
Because
yeah,
the only
especially like he.
species that he's known, and this thing was like 900. Now he's seeing the baby version, and it's probably like, I don't know what to do with this.
Well, not only that, but I mean, he just lost Yoda too. You got
Yeah,
to
that's
remember, it's
true.
6 years after
Yeah,
Return of the Jedi.
yeah.
That's when Yoda dies. So it's kind of like, okay, he gets another him, but not him, and he's so used to going to someone that looks like him for wisdom and knowledge, and now he's the one who has to impart that now. So it's definitely got to be like a weird juxtaposition for him. But then also, I just kind of like the compassion as they're walking, because he's still mindful that he's so little and he's so small that he still uses the force to kind of push him ahead as they're going on this little stroll or whatever. So, this all of that is really cool. Um, I love the aspect of him wanting to kind of quit and then give up, but then you start to see Grogu catch on, and then now he's flipping and he's doing all kind of stuff, and then how he even destroyed the trainer remote. I was just like, all right. But what Luke said was very poignant, where he said, when he was talking to Ahsoka, he said, it's not so much that I'm teaching him, I'm just making him remember something he already knew.
Yeah, he's basically reminding him of stuff.
Yeah.
Because, and you
So it
have to think
almost kind of
about
makes
it
you wonder,
too.
how much does he know?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm waiting for. Now, I don't know if this is going to happen. Obviously, not now, but it's either going to happen in future seasons of the Book of Boba Fett if Grogu stays in this thing. I mean, I could see him maybe popping up in Ahsoka or something. But if you just look at the Mandalorian, that's flagship show. That's probably where he's going to be rooted. It's going to be
Mhm.
weird when he starts being able to talk. That's what I'm waiting for.
Now, And here's the thing, and this is where a lot of fans are feeling that Grogu is actually going to go to the dark side.
I
One
have heard
because
that, yeah.
one because of course the whole choice he has to make, and he's conflicted in his feelings. The other thing is Luke has already said, like, I wonder if his heart is really in it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I wonder. So that's another kind of indicator. But the main one for me is, and this is kind of makes me kind of want to wonder a little bit. Luke said that he's just helping him remember what he already knew. Now, when we first met Grogu, granted he saved Din from that weird like Matterhorn type thing that was trying to run him over. But he also remember like he was using some dark side stuff, like where he
He
would choke
force
people.
choked Cara Dune.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like
Yep.
he's got some,
Oh
anger. It
boy.
seems like he's got some, anger in him.
It's a good
So
thing
you
this
kind
wasn't
of
a
gotta
couple years
wonder.
ago, dude. Otherwise, you would have gotten that Grogu is Snoke theory.
I
But you
know,
know
right?
what? It does remind me of some. Hey, Dwight joined us, by the way. Hey, Dwight.
Hey, Dwight.
So here's a thought. You remember in The Last Jedi when Luke said, I've only seen this power once before or whatever, this darkness or what? That'd be great if he was actually talking about Grogu.
That would be hilarious. That would be priceless.
Now, that would be the ultimate tie-in because Ryan Johnson kept that pretty vague, right? Because, of course,
Yep.
you assume that it was probably Kylo,
Yeah.
and so... But that would have been awesome if it was, you find out later on through whatever that he was actually talking about Grogu. All right, so Ronaldo wanted to correct something earlier. He says 1313 was the game, Underworld was the show. Yeah, and that's true. But and I was just talking about more like, because 1313, unlike the actual show, 1313 was featuring bounty hunters and smugglers, and Boba Fett was supposed to actually appear in that. So it wasn't really a mistake. I was referencing the game, and then I was also talking about the show as far as its tonality. You still had this sort of underworld vibe to it, which was a direction that I was really looking forward to and was hoping that Lucas would have at least made the show or the game. I mean, either or would have been fine. So then Ronaldo brings up something that we could actually talk about a little bit too, because we referenced it before. I never thought I ever see Luke and Ahsoka in the same scene.
Yeah, this was kind of weird for me because, and I was telling this to Eric off screen. Once again, it's got to be weird for, in this case, Ahsoka, because okay, Ahsoka, all Luke's instructors and masters that he learned everything from, she already had like eons ago.
Sure.
Right? I mean, Anakin was her master, and so was Obi-Wan in a sense. He was kind of like the assistant master in a way. And then, she was always around, Master Yoda and in fact the whole Jedi Council. I mean, she was
Including
around all the heavy
Palpatine.
hitters.
She was around
Yeah,
Palpatine all the time. I mean, that's what kind of is really
Yeah.
strange is like all these players that Luke has been around. It's like, oh yeah. And she knows him better than he does.
Exactly. But the crazy thing about it is that, like, okay, she's had all this time and all this experience because, she's, of course, been around longer.
Mm-hmm.
And Luke is still more powerful than her. Like, quickly, though. It's just kind of like she's already saying, like, oh, Master Skywalker. And it's like, technically, he only
that's
became
kind
a
of
Jedi.
Yeah, but I mean, that
Well,
could
we gotta
almost...
think about it because he just killed Vader, which made him a Jedi. That's officially made him a Jedi Knight. Because you got to kill a Sith or pass the trial. So, well, he didn't really kill Vader. He kind of more or less defeated him, but more or less, all right, he's a Jedi Knight.
Well, and he
So then
redeemed him. I mean, that's a big deal, too.
But then within 6 years after that, he's a master. I mean, and like, he's almost, as we've often kind of speculated, he's probably pretty close to almost being a grandmaster, probably not in short order from there. So
Yeah,
it's just kind of like
he became a grandmaster fairly quickly. So now in the new canon, Because in the Legends canon, he was a Grandmaster by now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he pretty much rose up pretty fast to Grandmaster. And that's actually implied in this new canon. But it is interesting to me to know at what point did he actually cross into the Grandmaster realm in this new timeline. But the point is good. It's just sometimes, when they call people master, it's almost like a thing of respect.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But you would think she would be the master.
Well, she
granted, she's no
probably
longer a Jedi.
Exactly. I mean, dude, she
but she's no
totally
longer a
would have
Jedi,
been a
so-
master. She's completely. I mean, if you were gonna do the whole like GED version or whatever, like the like, all right, you didn't graduate, but here's your, kind of
Yeah.
honorary diploma or whatever.
Took some online courses.
Yeah, exactly. You just did that adult ed thing or whatever. I mean, if she had continued on, she totally would have been a master. And I mean, it's not like she didn't stop learning or using the Force or perfecting her skills. So, I mean, she's definitely, let's put it this way, she's master level by now. Completely. Now, is she going to beat Luke? Of course not. Luke's the grandson of the Force and, kind of the new chosen one.
Poobah, yeah, basically.
Exactly. So, you have to look at that. You have to look at the fact that, okay, he's a little bit different. I mean, he's
the Michael Jordan of the
but
Star
it
Wars
is
universe at this point.
very otherworldly. I'm glad that Ronaldo brought that up because it is very strange that that she's interacting with him almost like kind of like he's the boss. And yet she was around decades earlier and she studied under Anakin. It's also interesting to note that Anakin, she has all this information about Anakin that Luke never knew. I mean, you have to think that behind the scenes, Luke probably was like, hey, what was he like? Because the time I met him, he wasn't exactly the coolest guy in the world. Lopped off my hand, tried to get me to join him, kept interrupting my thoughts when I'm trying to, convalesce. Tried to kill me again, tried to bring me before the Emperor. Let the Emperor shoot me with lightning, and then finally had a change of heart. So you had kind of the little bit more gentler, protective version of my dad than I did.
Well, that's very true. But then you also have to kind of wonder, all right, from Luke's standpoint, of course he would want to know what his dad was like, pre-suit, but you almost kind of have to wonder, was Ahsoka ever able to communicate with Anakin? Because now he's on the good side at this point. He's a Force ghost. So now would they have that type of connection? Or because she's no longer a Jedi anymore, does that not work? Or
Well, no, it's a good question. But you know what else? If you actually want to communicate with us, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I had to do it. I mean, we got.
I knew you had something.
Hey, man, we got people watching, and you guys, you know the drill. I'm gonna have you guys, each one of you, just take a second, hit that like button. It really helps us out. It puts us in front of more people, and it allows us to continue to bring the content to you. So we want to keep doing that. So if you haven't already subscribed, do that, but definitely hit the like button, and then continue to chat live with us. Dwight's chatting in. We got a lot of chats we got to go through. That's why I haven't even switched to this nifty little graphic yet. We have so many chats, I haven't had a chance to do it. But yeah, I think that it is interesting because when you look at the Ahsoka casting and Hayden Christensen's going to be in it, that implies that there is going to be a little bit of Force Ghost communication. I don't think it's just flashbacks. I mean, it could be, but you could have just done that by having him do a guest starring role. The fact that he's part of the cast, that tells me there might be more than one appearance.
That's a good point.
All right, so let's get to some more of those because Ronaldo's got a bunch and then Dwight's chatting in. It says, correct me if I'm wrong, But that temple is the same one that Kylo destroys. Yes, it is.
Yes. Yep.
It absolutely is.
Now my question is, they weren't on Octo, were they?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I guess when they almost have to be.
Not necessarily. That's what I'm saying, because like this is
Well,
early
that's true. No,
on.
no, no, no,
So
no. They weren't because I don't remember exactly where Luke built the temple.
he went to hide
He went to
after
hide at
after
Octo. And that was where
after
the
Kylo.
first, yes, and that was where one of the original older Jedi temples are.
Right,
That was,
okay.
yeah, that was him running away. That was when he was Grumpy Luke. I don't remember what planet. It wasn't Jeddah. You know, see, the problem is with the new canon, it's like if they just stuck with the old canon, well, it wasn't even really canon, but the old legend stuff, I would be up on it. But believe it or not, as many of the books and comics and stuff as I've read, there's still a lot of stuff that I missed. All right, so Ronaldo says, what do you think of Luke keeping the no attachments rule? Some fans are not happy about it. I think it's a little weird, but I don't necessarily think that it's out of place, because I think that that's part of when we see Luke in The Last Jedi and he's talking about the failures and all that stuff. I think that him trying to restart the Jedi Order as it was, he starts to learn like, oh, hey, this doesn't really work. Like, I don't think he learned about the failures of the Jedi strictly through the text. I think that he partially learned after maybe, and this goes into Kylo's fall as well, that maybe he was trying to do the whole Jedi Order the way that they did, and then, you know, he lost Kylo, and then all this other stuff went wrong, and he was like, you know, maybe this wasn't the way to go.
Well, yeah, and even Yoda kind of warned him in Empire. You know, he's like, you know, be mindful of your feelings. You know, the Emperor could take was that Empire or Return of the Jedi? I'm trying to remember which one. But it was like, you know, they could be used to serve the Emperor. You know what I mean?
That
And
was
it was just
Empire.
basically, yeah. So that's one of those things where it's kind of like, you know, you don't want to be hold on too close, because he was all trying to like leave his training to go help his friends. And they're like, look, you have a bigger assignment, you have a greater purpose. And, you know, and that's why Yoda was trying to tell him, was like, well, you know, so I let them die. He was like, well, if you respect what they fight for, yes. You know, and it seems cold hearted, but it's like you have a greater purpose than what they do. But of course, Luke couldn't let that go because he already formed those attachments with Han and Leia and Chewie. So I think that's where he's kind of, you know, and even he kind of even realized when he fought Vader for the second time, when Vader brought it up, sister. Oh, so you have a twin sister. Your feelings have now betrayed her too. So if you won't join, maybe she will. Then that's when he lost it. He was in perfect control until that happened. So I think that's why he's kind of trying to tell Grogu, like, look, no, you can't, because it's going to drive you to do things that you probably shouldn't do.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't really think of it like that, but that's a really good point, is the fact that he had formed these really strong attachments, and maybe it's just through his own experiences that he's seeing, like, oh, you know, I mean, there's some benefits, but, and if you think about it, from everything that we've learned about Luke in the sequel trilogy, it did seem like he distanced himself from everybody. That he kind of went and did his own thing. I mean, he did go with Lando to look for some artifacts and stuff like that, but he kind of stuck to himself, you know? So that's a good point. Let's see what else we got. Ronaldo says, I like it, but I think the natural progression of the story is to eventually abandon that rule.
Well, and I think you still got to remember, this is only 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So he's still, although he's rebuilding the temple and he's powerful, like he's still learning how to decipher, and you know, he doesn't have anyone really around to guide him like that anymore, to really tell him like, okay, he's kind of on his own. And
well, he's only got the one student. I mean, you know, if I make the Cobra Kai reference, Grogu is his Miguel. The Johnny, right. You know, it's like he's learning how to be the teacher now, because you got to look at it from the standpoint of, during the original trilogy, he was the student. Then afterwards, he was then going off and looking for artifacts, holocrons, you know, the different texts and all that stuff. Okay, cool. Now he's got more of an advanced knowledge of the Force, but he has to learn how to be a teacher now. And so I think that I was going to make the point, if you hadn't, but you did. And it's like, look, the temple hasn't even been built yet. So he's not really that, okay, the Jedi school is open for business kind of a thing. So we'll have to see, how that works. Let's see what else we got. Ronaldo says, it was interesting that Din, being from a warrior tribe that seeks battle, gave him an armor used for defense. Well, I mean, yes and no. Because he's got armor that's used for defense. I mean, sure, he's got a bunch of attachments and stuff like that, but, And you also have to remember, the Din knew that Grogu was going off to be a Jedi. And all the stuff that he had heard about Jedi, he even kind of said, well, this is to protect him.
Mm-hmm.
So when he's going off and doing his Jedi stuff,
it's just an extra layer of protection on top of whatever else he's learning over there with them.
Yeah, now, of course, what Din never really saw was, Jedi could deflect laser blasts and, they almost don't really need it. I mean, they could do it with their hand, they could do it with their saber. He's never really experienced the full-fledged Jedi-ness of the Jedi. He hasn't seen that yet, so he's still thinking more in his practical terms. Like, okay, well, here's a little chainmail thing that, you can use.
Right, in case you get in the water with some sharks, they can't
Yeah,
tear
right,
you apart.
Exactly. It's kind of like Grogu's shark suit or something, it's like, chainmail, huh? That's something that we haven't really... Which, if you remember, that was what we were speculating, actually, because when you saw, like, those little rings and stuff that they were making, it's like, are they making chainmail? Like, we've never really seen chainmail in Star Wars, and for very good reason. But hey, whatever. I it's fine.
I digress.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
So,
or let me get this one in. And he says, and remember, and Luke, member of a peacekeeping order, gave him a sword used for attack. That was kind of the second. That's why I wanted to get into that, because that was actually a second part of his other comment, right? So he gives Grogu this little defensive armor thing, and then Luke, who's supposed to be the peace-loving guy, gives him the sword for attack. But if you think about it, the Jedi don't really look at it like that.
Nope. I mean, like I said, once again, a sword has that's why they call it a double-edged, thing, is because it can be used for defense or attack. And it's all the matter in the style in which you use it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Anakin. Anakin's style was more aggressive, so he was more on the offensive. Obi-Wan was more on the defensive, where he wasn't trying to really attack much, but more so deflect and parry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally it. All right, so now Dwight joins the conversation, and he says, question, how do we know that he is more powerful than her at this point, 5 years after Return of the Jedi? Oh, we know.
Well, I mean, given, like I said, his lineage, I mean, he's just naturally adept to it. It's like, okay, when you're the grandson of the Force, and once you've gotten to, and of course you've had a grandmaster and a master kind of teaching you along the way. Once he got to a certain point, it's like, okay, it's kind of like you can grow exponentially once you understand the basics of things. And that's what I was saying, like Friday. It's like once you get to a certain point, and if you're already kind of like a prodigy, or you already having a natural, it's kind of like if you're a musician and you already a person can tell, like, man, this kid already kind of can pick this up, and he gets it, but it's like with a little training, oh yeah, this kid will be amazing. And you just give him a couple of lessons on, how to read music or where your hands should go, and kind of the foundation of things. Once you put that, and once they get that part, it's no different than Grogu. Like, look how quickly Grogu adapted to whatever Luke was telling him before. He's just, trying to pick up a frog, and now he's flipping, and he's, doing all this because all he had to do was unlock what was already in there. And that's the thing with Luke. He already had that natural propensity for the Force, as opposed to Ahsoka.
Well, I mean, here's my answer. There's there's two answers that I could give. They're a little bit. I understand what you're saying, Dwight, but here's some evidentiary type of things. Number one, both Filoni and Lucas have said that Luke is the most powerful Jedi. By the time Return of the Jedi is done, he is hands down the most powerful Jedi. There's nobody more powerful than him. So that's your out-of-universe answer. Your in-universe answer, all you have to do is look at both of their battles with Vader. Okay? In Rebels, Ahsoka went up against Vader. And keep in mind, Ahsoka was trained by Anakin. Ahsoka went on numerous missions. Ahsoka is just a hardened, battle-worn Jedi Knight after doing all the Clone Wars, had tons of experience, didn't even come really that close to beating him. I mean, she lopped off like part of his face mask and stuff like that. But if you remember, we all thought that he killed her.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, on the other hand, all he had to do was like, oh, sister? Oh, well, maybe she'll be turned too. And then Luke just overwhelms Vader. Now, granted, you can play with the whole, well, Vader wasn't necessarily in his prime, blah, 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 You can't really go by the emotional attachment because, sure, Luke was his son, but Ahsoka was kind of like almost like a
sister.
Younger sister type of thing, yeah. So, I mean, there's still a lot of emotion there. In fact, even maybe more so because he fought alongside of Ahsoka. He knew Ahsoka. I mean, sure, Luke was his kid, but,
He actually tried not to fight Ahsoka.
Right.
He tried to give her a way out before he even started. He was like, I have no problems with you. He was like, you can just go away. And that's saying something because technically, she, at one point, he did kind of call her a Jedi. He's like, well, that's not the Jedi way. That's what she says. Well, I'm no Jedi. But, they were under the pretty much the authority of the Emperor to wipe out any Force users. I mean, that was the whole purge. That's why you had Inquisitors running around. So Vader wanting her to walk away, he gave her the same chance he gave Obi-Wan.
Yep. And so he held back a little bit. He was kind of holding back with Luke at first, but by the time Return of the Jedi hit, yeah,
Empire he held back.
In Empire he held back, but not so much in Return of the Jedi. You could tell too by the different fighting styles. In Empire, he was using one hand. He was kind of playing with them. By the time Return of the Jedi hit, Vader had to use two hands against Luke because Luke was a lot more powerful than what he was.
Yeah, he even said that before they even fought when they were on that bridge. He was like, I see you've constructed a new lightsaber. Indeed, you are powerful.
Yeah, and he could sense them in the Force. And keep in mind, this is during Return of the Jedi. Luke maybe had a month of training, never was in battles with lightsabers, went up against Vader and actually beat him. I think it's safe to say that Luke is way more powerful than Ahsoka. Just saying. All right, let's see what else Dwight's got for us. It says the masters called each other master all the time. Yeah, that was actually the point that I was trying to make to you earlier. Yoda referred to Windu as Master Windu. And that's why I was saying that it's not necessarily her acknowledging, it was almost like saying Mr. or Sir or something,
Valid point, Dwight.
All right, so now we go back to Ronaldo. So Ronaldo says, remember when Dave Filoni said Qui-Gon didn't agree with the attachments rule and that it was the Jedi's downfall? It doesn't really work, so at some point they leave it. At least that's what I think. Yeah, but look what happened to Qui-Gon, though. I'm not entirely sure that Qui-Gon is the pillar that people that are looking back on history. Now, granted, they should, and here's the thing that I find really interesting about all the lore in Star Wars is the fact that so Qui-Gon was actually considered, and this is canon, by the way, he was considered one of the best Jedi swordsmen.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you look at, and we did a show on this, actually. I don't know if it was all about this, but I know this was a big part of whatever the topic was. And it could have also been when we were doing multiple topics per show. But we were talking about the almost, I don't know, I guess it's almost like a dichotomy where on one hand, he's supposed to be the best swordsman, but then when you look at the battle in Phantom Menace, you're like, I don't know if I see that. But you have to remember that these guys haven't seen a Sith in a long time.
millennia.
Yeah, and I actually thought that, Qui-Gon was showing an impressive thing when Maul basically jumped off his bike and instantly just started going at him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, the whole attachment thing, and you got to understand, like, of course, Qui-Gon was more of a renegade. He was trying to, he circumvented a lot of stuff. He kind of played loose with the rules a little bit. But the whole thing with attachment is that it does hamper you, but you have to have control over it. You can't let it. And that's where, and the best example of that was watching Obi-Wan and Duchess Satine.
Yeah.
Because there was clearly a relationship there, but Obi-Wan still kept in perspective, okay, look, this is still my duty. I have to do this. And Anakin even tried to argue against him about it because Anakin had Padme. And he was like, well, if you feel the way that, you feel about her, you have to do something. Why don't you? You should be out there, doing this. And he's just like, no, I have to follow what I'm supposed to do. And Anakin really couldn't understand that. And because, of course, he was allowing his emotions for Padme to overrule him. And that's how you end up going to the dark side. So once again, it's all about balancing the Force. And that's really the key of a Jedi and Anakin actually had a right to a degree when he told Padme, he's like, well, because she even said it's like, well, I thought Jedi weren't supposed to love. He's like, well, no, we're encouraged to love, but not go too far with it. You know what I mean? And except for he couldn't actually apply that, unfortunately. But yeah, so I don't but the whole attachment thing.
I understand, man. If Padme actually was expressing some interest in me, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna form an attachment.
Yep.
It's a small
That's
one.
what I'm attaching to.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Insert Padme's white pants. But anyway, but no.
Oh man.
Yeah, I think that's. But I mean, there's a lot of dogma to the Jedi where they kind of realize, like, okay, and that's the cool thing, where they kind of realize, like, yeah, maybe this works, maybe this doesn't, or maybe it works, but you have to maybe present it differently. And I think that's the difference when you watch the High Republic. When you read, well, not watch, but read the High Republic.
I was just about to say that. I was gonna say that when you really start reading all the High Republic stuff and the struggles they have, it really shines a light on this very discussion, actually. I mean, one day in the future, because I want to read some more High Republic books and stuff like that, and, get more of the adventures of the characters, but I think it would be a really cool, basically almost like a sequel to our runaway Dave Filoni explains the Force video that's got like over 1,500 views. We must have been on that day. But it would be interesting to explore the current Jedi way versus the High Republic and how the High Republic actually was facing a lot of these same issues, but how they dealt with it and how they actually had a little bit more individuality in the Force. Like, Avar Kriss basically hears everything in song, and, every one of these Jedi have kind of their own spin on things. And they also did a little bit more of a Windu thing, right? They weren't afraid to flirt a little with the dark side, but not go too far with it. And they also had some attachments as well. Ronaldo follows it up by saying he also didn't obey the code, meaning Qui-Gon. And yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, I think he was another one that I think he basically had it right. But, it was almost like he was ahead of his time. There's no way the Jedi were going to go for what he was selling in the Phantom Menace. And by the time beginning of Revenge of the Sith, when Yoda's even realizing, like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a problem. Even the Jedi, I think was it in Sith or was it Clones where he was like, even the experienced ones are getting
That was
arrogant.
Sith.
Yeah.
Sith.
Okay,
Yep.
that's what I thought. So yeah, but wow, what an incredible discussion this has become. So tying it in back to the Book of Boba Fett, which is what this episode's really about, it's going to be interesting to see what Grogu does because I really have no idea what he's going to choose.
Yeah, I mean that's the big mystery, and I think I don't know if we're gonna find that out this coming Wednesday, or we're gonna find that out maybe Mandalorian season 3. But kind of shifting gears back over to Tatooine, though, there's some stuff going on over there where you got this whole the Pike Syndicate is kind of running spice, which is essentially like space cocaine or heroin or something, I guess.
Exactly.
Um, and they're just taking over Tatooine, and good old Cobb Vanth, he was the marshal of his town. He's kind of like he squares off with them at first, and then he tried to end it in a piece of he tried to give him a way out, and then he had to pop two of them, and one he let go. But Mando, when he shows up and kind of tries to warn him, like, look, man, these guys, yeah, they're coming after, us as far as Boba and all the rest of us. But if they beat us, who's going to help you? You know what I mean? Because they're gonna come take your area. So, you know, it's better off you kind of join up with us now, where we could all kind of, as a united front, take them out. And then, once pretty much like soon as he pulls off, which is so unfortunate, you know, out of the dust from the wind comes the mighty Cad Bane. And it's like, I never, I mean, we talked about this, like, man, wouldn't it be cool? I wonder if he's still around. And we often wonder if that was going to happen, but to actually see, I mean, when he walked out, and I was like, okay, who is this guy? But I saw the hat, but then when I saw the blue, like I hadn't even had to see his eyes. So once I saw the blue skin, I'm like, no way.
It's
They did
Thrawn.
not bring right.
Well,
They
I
did
mean,
not bring Cad Bane into this.
I wasn't really overly surprised because I've been saying from the beginning that it would not shock me in the least, because if they're going to bring Cad Bane into live action, this is the show they're going to do it. And I was happy to see
it though.
Chrysanthemum was the one that I never thought. I mean, when Black Chrysanthemum came out, that was the one that to me was just, again, you can make the same argument, right? He should be there.
Mm-hmm.
But being that he was a comic character only, and he was popular, but it wasn't like he was super well known. I mean, when I first thought that, see, that's how you know that these guys are super fans that are making this show, because that was insane. And yeah, to see Cad Bane come out, finally be in live action, and he's just so sinister and so creepy.
Yeah, man.
And I thought that they did a really great job capturing the essence of it. The other reason why I wasn't really too surprised to see him was simply because the Bad Batch episode that he was in, where he went up against Fennec, it's like, well, I think they're trying to tie this in. I think they're foreshadowing this. But I thought that it was interesting, though, that he's basically helping the Pikes. And now you're starting to see this whole underworld type criminal organization vibe that we were hoping that we would see. Now the show is starting to deliver what I think it was promising in the trailers.
Yeah.
And that is, you're starting to see who all the players are, what side they're all on. Because you basically have Boba Fett saying, okay, well, we got to get some muscle. We got to put some stuff together. Okay, so of course he's going to reach out to Din. He's going to reach out to whoever else. I mean, he gets Black Chrysanthemum. He does all this stuff. He's starting to put this together. Okay, fine. Now you have to go and you have to show these guys getting the job, accepting the job, the loose ends they have to tie up in their own lives in order to commit the time to do this. So you see this build up. But then, like you said, he's reaching out to Cobb Vanth, and I was glad that they brought that in, because one of the overarching themes to this show is basically all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Because here's Boba going around saying, look, these guys are overtaking and everything. Well, what did the first group of people say? Well, they're not messing with us. Sounds like they got a beef with you, man. So
yeah, that sounds like a you problem.
yeah, that sounds yeah, right. That sounds like a you problem. I failed to see where I fit into this. And Boba rightfully is basically trying to say, look, guys, today it's me, tomorrow it's going to be you. And that's essentially the speech that he gives to Cobb, because Cobb is just kind of like, look, we're on the outskirts, it doesn't really matter. We're Freedom Town now. It's almost like the line that they said in one of the Friday the 13th. I think it was part 6. Because they changed it to like Camp Forest Green or something. And Tommy Jarvis is like, look, man, you can change the name, but to him, to Jason, it's still Camp Crystal Lake. That's not going to stop him. He's not going to be like, oh, well, it's Camp Forest Green now. I guess I got to go somewhere else. And,
right.
And that's basically how this is. It's like, okay, yeah, it's Freedom Town, but so what? And they basically saw, once Cad Bane stepped into it, it's like, okay, now you see who's a major player on the other side.
Yeah. Exactly. And you just gotta wonder, who else is gonna show up for this big showdown that's gonna eventually occur, which is probably gonna be, this Wednesday's episode. And I almost wish, and I mean, I think that's why they kind of teased it, because it's like, Din had just left. Because it really would have been interesting to see, like, okay, who would be the better gunslinger between, he and Bane. But and I believe so. I believe Bane will win in that, because he's a more experienced bounty hunter. He's been doing it a lot longer, and he's been trained by one of the best, being Django.
Well, and the thing is that, and that's the thing, it's like I'm still waiting for official canon on that one, because that was like an expanded universe thing that came out. But one thing that is definitely canonized, common knowledge, is that Django was always the number one bounty hunter in the universe. He was the guy. Cad was number 2. When Django was killed, Cad became number 1. And we know that he basically helped train Boba in a lot of instances. So I think then there was an unaired episode, and I don't even think it was shot, but it was a Clone Wars episode that was supposed to happen where Cad and Boba were supposed to team up. Something happened, and they became at odds with each other. And that's where this whole background of the hatred thing comes in, and everything else. So that's going to be really interesting to see any kind of a showdown between those two, which I think we're going to see. But it's going to be interesting to see how they play it off. Because, again, I don't think that they brought Cad Bane in just to kill him off.
Yeah, no, I think he's definitely got to be a major player going forward, especially like in season 2. Because I don't think he's going to, just be, thrown away at the end of this. I think he's got to be, especially since he's such a beloved character, and he's such a cool character that you can do so many different things with. I mean, like I said, that whole battle with him and Fennec was awesome.
Yeah.
So it's I can really see a lot coming out of this, and this will be a real challenge for Boba.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the other reason why I just don't think that Din could ever beat him, because I mean, Boba, I think, is better than Din, and I don't know if Boba could beat Cad or not. But do I think what? This is interesting.
Oh, yeah. Do you think that? So when the Pikes blew up the whole sanctuary, which sucks, because I actually like that place.
I know, I did too.
Every time they go in there, it feels like some weird, like
weird version
reminds me of like 10 Forward or something like that from Star Trek or something like that. It's
Or the
weird.
Talon from Smallville.
Yeah. But do you think that the Pikes blew that up for a purpose other than just to tick off Boba Fett because he's supposed to be guarding over it? Or do you think there's another reason why they blew up the sanctuary?
I think that was an interesting move. I'm glad you brought that up because I think it's a very strange move. Because if
It was.
anywhere, if there was any place for them to move a lot of spice and sell it, it would be there. Why would you blow up a nightclub? That would be like that's where you would want to sell this stuff.
That's what you exactly.
So there's got to be either a political reason because the sanctuary was kind of like in his little domain, and it was very, very Godfather-ish. They kind of leave the little briefcase thing in there, and I mean, it's just
walk off.
Yeah, walk off, and then it blows up, and it that droid, man.
3PO droid is like, oh yeah, you forgot your.
Yes. I mean, it kind of reminded me of something you'd see either in The Godfather or The Untouchables or something like that.
Yep, the mob movies.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really cool because once again, I think it's living up to its promise because, and this is a reason why I basically I chose this graphic, is because this whole season, if I were to sum it up thematically, I think it's about choices. Everybody's having to make choices. Boba Fett could have just gone on and been a bounty hunter and done what he always did, but no, he's making a choice. I want to put down roots and run this area and be this somewhat benevolent, honorable, crime lord or something. And of course, Fennec had to make her choice about sticking with him or just going off and taking bounties. Grogu, obviously, as we saw at the very last scene of this episode, he has a choice. He either has to follow the Jedi way or follow the Mandalorian way. And even, Cat obviously made his choice. So all these people are having to make choices. Din, another one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think that this really is a good build. I mean, once again, they keep saying that every episode is going to leave you like, okay, with another oh shoot moment, and this one definitely didn't disappoint. Honestly, I didn't even think we were going to go back to Luke and Grogu. Like after Mando, I thought that was actually going to be it. But the fact that he brought him back and gave him the whole choice between the lightsaber and the armor, it's just like, okay, we're still not done with this yet. And it's a ride, man. But I'm curious to see who else is going to show up on either side, whether it's on the Pike Syndicate side or Boba Fett side.
Well, I have to take this opportunity to fight for somebody I've always wanted, and that's Bossk. I would love to see Bossk. I think it would make sense for IG-88 to pop up. Now whether he actually goes to Boba's side or not, that remains to be seen. But it would be interesting. There's a lot of things that are going to be. Another one, Harrison Ford was rumored to be doing some motion capture stuff and on set. Could we see Han Solo in the next episode?
That would be interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, I don't rule anything out. I mean,
well, yeah, we got CGI. We got CGI Luke, and
sure, CGI Han can't be too far away. I mean, look, the funny thing was, I remember when I texted you Wednesday morning and said, "Dude, you're not going to believe this." I mean, I accidentally, and it's true. I wasn't looking for anything. I was like, okay, I got this event that I got to do tonight, and then I can watch the show. And I'm scrolling through just a bunch of stories, and I see a picture of Cad Bane that obviously is not the animated version. And then the headline said something in relation to the Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, oh, no way. They actually brought him in now. I thought maybe he was going to pop up if he was in the season finale. So that's when I texted you and said, "Oh yeah, man, I accidentally saw this spoiler, but holy crap, what a spoiler." Now, I didn't even have any
Yeah.
idea that Luke was in it yet, and then I accidentally found that out later that day. Once again, scrolling through Google Newsfeed, and then I saw that. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is going to actually
Yeah.
be an interesting episode then."
Oh yeah, man. I mean, like, I couldn't, even I had my grandfather watch it and he was like, super excited about it. It was just cool to see like Luke firing up the, igniting the green and swinging the saber around and, just being Luke Skywalker and just seeing how far he's grown and matured. But even just the technology of what they did with the whole deep fake thing is just crazy.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
um, so how would you rate this episode?
Mm. Well, if I had to rate this episode, I hesitate to give anything a 10. I'm going to go a 9. I mean, I'm tempted to give
Okay.
it a 10 actually, but I don't know, but then what if the next episode is even more mind-blowing than this one?
Right. Exactly. You
I
gotta
mean,
kind of say something for the finale.
yeah, and I mean, it's not without some issues. I mean, and nothing really big though. I mean, I would give it a solid 9.
I'll agree with you. I'll go with you on that one. I'll give it a side. What about you guys out there, Ronaldo and Dwight? What would you rate this episode?
Well,
Anybody else who's out there chatting? You
yeah.
know,
Doesn't just have to be Ronaldo and Dwight.
exactly.
Although we want Ronaldo and Dwight. Well, speaking of Ronaldo and Dwight, they got a bunch more chats in here. Let's get these things in going. He says, also, Cad Bane looks amazing. It's funny,
Oh
too,
yeah.
because so there was a guy on YouTube that I saw that basically went ahead and redid that scene, making Cad Bane look a little bit more like the animated version, which is really cool. But I have to say that I like the way he looked. I love the whole teeth thing. Just the whole sinister nature that he had. I thought that was incredible.
I just wish he had his toothpick. That was the only thing that was missing.
Right. And then, he goes on to say, I can't believe how good his face looked. Considering that design, they made a great work. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just incredible. I was kind of like you. I was like, wow. Because when you really look at Cad Bane, you think about, oh, how are you going to do this in live action? And the fact that they got the same guy to do the voice,
Yeah, that was the cool
that
thing.
was
When
just
I heard
the
him start
coolest.
talking, I was like,
Yeah.
man,
I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
that's
you did
Cad.
not do that. That's so cool. Yeah, that was great.
The only thing is, did he didn't have on his rocket boots.
Well, we don't know. They didn't. I mean, they
I don't
showed
think.
him
I don't.
from a
They
long
showed his
shot, but
feet.
yeah, but it
Yeah, I
wasn't.
don't
They
think he
didn't
had
linger on
because
it.
remember because he lost when he fought Fennec. Because remember he was falling.
Oh yeah,
And he only
right.
had like one from it. So I think they're trying to keep that continuity, which I think is cool.
Mm-hmm. Ronaldo goes on to say, I think it was a warning, Godfather style. He's talking about the bomb. Yeah,
Mm.
that could be. That could be. That maybe that was just, hey, listen, if you keep this up, it's going to be more than that. And then, of course, he goes on to say, Rip Max Rebo, you will be missed. Hey, he may not be dead. We don't know. We don't know the extent of, you just see the outside and you see that bomb going off, but you don't really know. Maybe he was backstage. Who knows? Probably not, but I think he was actually performing at the time that the bomb went off. Maybe he was doing the Gap Band 5's You Dropped a Bomb on Me.
Oh.
All right, I'll stop. Hey, in spite of my terrible, corny jokes, if you guys haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button and hit the subscribe button.
Yes. That's what keeps him from making those jokes.
Yeah, exactly, right. I'm going to have to start threatening him, right? He says, Anno missed the Twi'lek owner. She was cool.
Yeah, I actually liked her. She was
I
actually
know,
kinda cool.
she was so cool, and I hope that I still kind of hope that
I mean,
that maybe
she might have
survived.
survived, depending.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And he says, I have the theory that the Jedi way and the Mandalorian way will combine at some point.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, because you got the whole Tar Vizsla thing, and that's what I was thinking. Like, okay, well, if you can kind of combine the two, you know,
I could see that.
especially if Luke kind of finds out, like, oh, there was a Mandalorian Jedi. I mean,
That's
he's gonna kind
possible.
of honor both, so that'd be cool.
It would be kind of interesting if Luke and Boba met up again. Hey, man, sorry I
Well, if he
lightsabered your gun, Okay, and then finally Ronaldo says, too bad Aura Singh is dead.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
that would have been.
I agree. That would have
Cool.
been cool. Yeah, that would have
Oh,
been.
but you said Dengar is supposed to also maybe popping up too.
I had heard that, yeah. I heard that Dengar might actually make an appearance. I mean, look, everything is open for all these guys. Every bounty hunter that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, a lot of the guys in maybe the comics, and I am talking strictly new canon, although if they want to go back into Legends and pluck some people out and canonize them, they certainly could do that too. It'll be interesting. The other thing that I was thinking is, I wonder, because there's been rumors that Kira might have her own series, that Emilia Clarke has been signed on to play her again. I kind of wonder if maybe she'll make an appearance, because I really do think that given the heavy Crimson Dawn element that's been permeating all the comics lately, if maybe Crimson Dawn is who the Pikes are ultimately working for. Maybe she pops up.
Yeah, I mean that would be interesting.
And what would be ultra bizarre?
And maybe that's why Han shows up.
I know, and that's what I was about to say. Can you imagine? You guys are all saying, oh, Ahsoka and Luke. Yeah, here's one. A young Harrison Ford meeting Kira from Solo. That right there for me, that's the mind-blowing one. That would be a weird interaction for me. Especially because, if Harrison Ford's actually doing the, where they're going to like motion capture him and stuff like that, that'd be insane. But I mean, the question really becomes, as we leave you guys on another Monday night, what did you guys think of this episode? What'd you guys think of all the stuff that we talked about today? And question of this week is, who do you think we're going to see pop up in the next episode? Leave that in the comments section. And you still have maybe 30 seconds or so to chat it in. But otherwise, again, I can't say this enough. If you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, because all of this stuff not only helps us as a channel grow, but it also makes sure that you guys don't miss any of our content. Remember that we're live every Monday and Friday at 8 o'clock. And we really don't know what we're talking about this Friday yet, do we? This is like, we replay this.
We actually kind of do.
Oh, do we? Oh, yeah, we do. Right, because we had to do this episode before we did the next one. It was something to do with Obi-Wan, right? Kind of forgot what it was.
Yep. Yeah. It's basically information about the Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, it's information about the Obi-Wan series, like new Obi-Wan stuff, but we had to cover all this before it made sense to talk about it. So we got some new Obi-Wan developments, so you're not going to want to miss that Friday night, 8 o'clock. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.